Bryson DeChambeau won the U.S. Open a couple of days ago, and now we're reacting to this, and we're going to talk about it from the perspective that, a lot of people are talking about it. How much is it going to change golf, right? How much will golf have to adjust and evolve because of Bryson DeChambeau? If you would have asked me that question a year ago, I would have laughed at you and asked you if you ever watched golf. But here we are a year later. U.S. Open just concludes at Winged Foot. He was the only player under par, dominated essentially the tournament, had an incredible Sunday round, and now we're left in the wake trying to figure out what to make of Bryson DeChambeau's win. So the approach we're taking today on this mini-sode, we're going to go through it and just some quick thoughts on what this means for golf. I got a couple quick thoughts on what I think it will do, how golf should adjust, and why I think maybe it's not a great thing for the sport in general. And then we're going to take some questions from Mike. Mike is not a big golfer. We haven't really talked about that much on the podcast yet, but as a kind of casual fan, Mike, I'm going to let you throw some questions at me. The questions that are on your mind after watching him play this weekend.
Yeah, these are just going to be stream of consciousness. Like, hey, look at this guy. I wonder what he's all about kind of questions that came to my mind this weekend while watching him and also in the aftermath, enjoying some of the coverage of him.
Perfect. And I'll do my best to answer those. Remember, you can find us online at distantreplaypodcast.com, on Twitter, Instagram, and of course, YouTube. So Bryson wins the U.S. Open, 6 under par. Matthew Wolff was second at even. Everybody else was over par. He had the only under par round of the day on Sunday, which tells you how good he was relative to the field. But now the question is, what does golf need to do about his style of play? Because, Mike, if you don't know it, he hits it as far as he can. He got control of it, okay? He kind of has an idea of where it's going to go. But he's like, hey, if I miss the fairway, it's fine. I'd rather have 100 yards in from the rough than 180 yards in from the fairway. I'm just going to it's a more accurate shot. I'm going to have a higher percentage results by doing it that way. The problem in this tournament was the fairways were so difficult for everybody to hit. So if nobody's hitting fairways, then he has a huge advantage over the field because everybody's playing out of the rough. Instead, he's playing much further. He was top 5 in finding greens in regulation, Mike, despite hitting just 23 of 56 fairways, which was the lowest proportion of any U.S. Open champion. And in the field itself hit less than 40% of the fairways, which was the lowest percentage of the U.S. Open. So that's why this tournament was perfect for him, because everybody was playing out of the rough. Now, what does it mean for the future of golf? Well, that's the question. There's a lot of reaction, in the days following the U.S. Open. What does golf need to do? Now, I think obviously they need to make some changes to the courses in terms of creating some more obstacles and penalties and trouble in that landing area where he and some of these other guys are playing. But will golf shift? Because, Mike, do you remember tiger proofing? Have you ever heard tiger proofing?
I've heard of tiger proofing, and my question was going to be to you is, it seems like there's my thoughts on this, seems like there's a method to his madness. So what would be the difference with tiger proofing, of course, as opposed to what they could do with the way he plays? What is the difference between their style of play? Well,
for Tiger, I mean, he was the only guy, and Bryson is this way, but I mean, there are a lot of guys that are hitting it long enough to where, he didn't have a huge advantage on the field in terms of that. I mean, Tiger was the first guy that was like really consistently just bombing it over 300 yards with accuracy, right? He had the complete game, and it was hitting fairways. I mean, Bryson hits a decent number of fairways, but he also doesn't care if he misses them. And it should be a penalty. It should be a tougher shot out of the rough, but he's so far out there. So, back then they were having to lengthen golf courses just so Tiger wasn't playing it from 100 yards in the fairway while everybody else was playing it from, 160, 170, 180. But I think the difference is Tiger's goal wasn't to just hit it as far as he could. I mean, he was trying to play with accuracy and play it around the course as he felt was best. Now, Bryson is doing the same thing in his mind, but he doesn't care as much about hitting the fairway. So the penalty has to be worse and a little more harsh for a guy that's not hitting the fairway.
So the genesis of the DeChambeau strategy is, I'm going to hit the ball so far that even if I'm in the rough, it doesn't matter because the shot is still short enough where I could be effective.
Right. Yeah. I mean, because have you ever played golf, Mike?
I have.
Okay.
Yes.
So you have an idea. Like, I mean, if you have a wedge in your hand, it's not a longer shot, right? It's a shorter swing. It's more controlled. So you're going to hit that with much more accuracy that you're going to hit a longer iron. I mean, that's just how golf is. The shorter the shot, the more accuracy, because you don't have to hit it as far. So his idea is, the shorter I am, the less accurate I need to be, and my results will still be better than most people that are playing it from a longer distance with a better lie. So that's the whole strategy.
Yep.
So what does it mean? And the problem, I think the bigger problem for golf isn't what he's going to do to these courses, and I think that's going to be, something they have to consider. I think it's just the future of the sport, because the sport is in really good shape right now. Not post pandemic, because we're still in the middle of it, but as things begin to subside, golf's become the sport that has kind of risen more than anything, because everybody can play it. It's being played for a longer time. It started back before baseball, football, basketball, any of those sports. So it was back and people were watching it, and it's been on TV. So it's been really good this summer for the sport. Now, I was listening during the telecast, and one of I don't remember who it was, but somebody on the NBC broadcast said, if I have a kid right now, I want to teach them to swing as hard as they can. I think that's the best approach to take to golf right now, is just to get up there and swing as hard as you can. And I thought that was a horrible, horrible piece of advice, and I thought it was a very bad look at what might be to come, because look, what Bryson's doing, you have to be very talented and athletic to do it, right? Not everybody, Mike, me and you can't just get up there and swing as hard as we want, and the results turn us into competitive golfers, right? It's just not going to happen that way. What he does is very thought out and very accurate, and he's very technical. But also beyond that, this is what is going to end up hurting people. The problem with golf is a lot of times guys can't play really long as professionals. Like a Tiger, you saw what he's done with his back, Mike. He swings so hard and did for so long that his back has had major, major problems, and now he's just trying to survive from major to major, essentially. And if he can get in a couple rounds between that, great. People doing that at a young age is going to end up being a health concern much later in life. Now, I don't know if you've seen Bryson swing. I don't want to get too into the weeds to it, Mike, but he lets that front foot pivot so that he didn't put all the pressure on his knee, and it kind of releases some of that tension. So he's different. But if that's the message you're sending to younger players, is swing as hard as you can, I think it's going to end up hurting a lot of people in the long run.
I could see that. And I have seen those videos of him practicing his swing where he just swings like really hard, like 20 times in a row.
Yeah.
Crazy with that torque. And the comparison that you just made with the announcers sort of got me to think that's like Jeff Van Gundy telling everyone on a Warriors broadcast that I'm going to teach my kid to take 30-foot jumpers before they learn how to shoot layups.
Right.
Because of how good Stephen Curry is.
Yeah.
Like, that works for Stephen Curry, but it's not going to work for the everyday basketball player.
No. And maybe he meant to say, I'm just going to teach my kid to just hit it as far as he can, but swinging as hard as you can is not a solution, and it's not going to work. It's not going to work for 99% of the people, because it's going to end up hurting them, like physically, literally hurting them. And also you lose so much control doing that. You have to have the perfect swing to execute to what he's doing. So I don't want to take away anything that Bryson's done, because I appreciate and admire anybody that can set a goal, right, and do things their way, even though throughout this whole process, Mike, I don't know if you much pay attention. I'm about to start taking some of your questions here, but there hadn't been a lot of positive feedback to what he's done. For the most part. And more so like kind of a mocking approach to what he's done, right? The guy's drinking protein shakes all day. He's working out all the time. He's posting kind of, odd pictures on Instagram and social media. And okay, sure, we make fun of what he's going to do. And then he goes out here and he had the vision, followed that vision, and achieved it. And I think that's what's remarkable to me, but I just don't know what it's going to do for the sport. I don't think it's a great thing. I don't say that as an old man, like, you got to play golf the right way. I don't have a problem with that. I think it just sends the wrong message to everybody that maybe is growing up now, and it's going to maybe change, how many people are playing, how healthy the game actually is moving forward. That's kind of what my thought is on the matter. So let's fire away at some questions, Mike. You were watching some stream of conscious questions. Let's go.
All right. What kind of golfer was he before he gained 40 pounds of muscle?
He was a good golfer. He won the U.S. Amateur a few years back. He hasn't been highly successful as a pro. He's been very competitive. He's won. But I think the reason he did this was to step up his game, take it to the next level. He had this, he saw what Brooks Koepka had done and some other guys in terms of hitting it really far and just kind of overpowering the courses, and decided, I'm going to do it this way. So it's not like he was some chump beforehand. He was very highly decorated, very highly thought of, but there were still some questions on, could he get to that upper echelon level before this all happened?
All right. What is with his hat?
It's a golf
ridiculous,
hat, right?
It's a golf hat. I don't see any other younger golfers ever wearing a hat like that. So I don't know if there was my next question sort of bridges off this, but is there any significance to that hat?
No, I think it's just the style. Nothing that I'm aware of.
Okay, in general with him, between the hat, between the way he carries himself, between his social media feeds, which I checked out this weekend, is he in on the joke, or is he being dead serious and not joking around with some of the stuff that he posts? I mean, I saw him in a video walking around, I believe it was his house or a house he's building, like flexing and doing
Right.
all sorts of strange things. Is he in on the joke, or is he the joke?
I think he's definitely not in. I mean, I think he's aware. He's very aware of what people are saying. I think he's comfortable with that. He's always kind of done his things his own way. He's very detailed, like even to the point, Mike, where he's talking about how much the dew point affects his swing, like humidity. What is humidity going to do to the golf ball? Like things that people had never really thought of. He's very in depth and detailed and very technical in that aspect. And so he's always kind of been that way. And I don't know that. I don't know that I would say he is the joke necessarily. I think he understands what people say, and he's just like, whatever. This is who I am. I'm gonna do it my own way. It is what it is.
Okay, the fans' opinion of him overall. What's the consensus of what the fans think of him? Actual hardcore golf fans.
I think most people aren't a huge fan of him. He's easy to make fun of, Mike. Okay, he's done things on the course like, and this is only in this is since the restart after the COVID break. He had a official called over. Right, so these guys have the officials on the course that walk around, but they're just kind of monitoring play. They're there in case a player has a question or a rules concern or something like that. He called an official over to see if he could get relief from ants. Right, and you heard the conversation. He was pointing out there's fire ants close to my ball. I need to pull it up. So he does little things like that, and he's always been a notoriously slow player. I don't know if you've seen these like yardage books they have, but they can actually read greens this way. It shows up the break, and he'll pull them out for like an 18-inch putt, and it's just he's other players, and because of this, fans feel the same way. Have really kind of hated his style of play because he is so slow, and it bogs down the course. It affects other players around him, play partners, players behind him in groups, and because of that, I mean, I think everybody kind of makes fun of his style, and he's even been negative towards fans. Like even this during this COVID era, when there's no fans out there, and the cameras are kind of everywhere they have to be, he got mad at a camera that was shooting him after he hit a bad shot out of the bunker and kind of stayed with him for a reaction shot, as normal, right? As any broadcast would do to any shot, right, good or bad. And he got mad that they kept the shot on there. He thought it was bad for his brand and for the sport to see that negative moment.
Interesting. I'm learning a lot here. Okay. Now, was he this kind of personality and all the things you just explained? Was he this kind of personality before he gained the muscle?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I don't think his personality changed. Yeah.
All right. So now the last one I have for you is this. As a very casual golf fan, I've been hearing how the next, maybe not the next Tiger Woods, but the next big thing in golf was Rory McIlroy, then Jordan Spieth, then Brooks Koepka. You throw Jason Day in there, Dustin Johnson. We've heard this about guys changing the game before. What makes him different?
Well, I don't know that he's on that level in terms of results. I mean, it's hard to put him in any kind of box right now because he's not that same traditional do everything perfectly and accurately that we've seen out of a Tiger or a Jack Nicklaus. But the results, I mean, look, the results in the majors weren't very good beforehand. I mean, his best finish before this was one tied for 15th. Everything else was 25th or worse. I had one top 21, but whatever, tied for 21. So everything's been kind of mediocre at best. I mean, he's missed a bunch of cuts in the majors. This year alone, he's tied for 4th and a win. So you kind of see that difference. I don't know, Mike. I don't think he's going to transcend the sport in terms of he's going to threaten Tiger's major record, because I think ultimately other guys will kind of maybe take the same approach, and with that same approach can probably execute it similarly. I don't think it's an approach that nobody can execute, right? I think Tiger's different because Tiger can hit it long and where he wants to, and his short game's so much better. I think at least his chipping, and he's one of the best iron players in the game. Bryson, if the courses get longer, it's going to make it difficult for Bryson. But other players, I think, will just say, hey, you know what? What do I have to lose by just saying, let's do the same thing, hit it as far as I can, and then play the approaches from there. So he's not in that category, although, he's like one of the first. I think there's only been a couple of players that have done what he did in terms of winning, 3 USGA tournaments that he won, the US Open, USAM, and something else. But the other players were like Tiger and Jack. So he isn't that group for a couple things. But I think in terms of like the game, I don't think anybody's looking at him as the next Tiger Woods.
Okay, so my closing thoughts on this are: it seems like DeChambeau is an athlete where there is no comparable for him or no comp for him in his sport. So it's kind of like hey, let's wait and see if this is a blip or if it lasts or if it's something that can last. And the thing with him is there's no comp for his attitude and the way he carries himself, and there's no comp for his playing style.
Right.
So he's just like a complete wild card. Let's see what happens with this guy. And in the interim, everyone's going to have their own opinion on both how he carries himself and his playing style. So very interesting.
Yeah, pretty much. And we'll see. I mean, I think courses will adjust in terms of both length, and there's got to be a way to penalize those results a little bit more. And I think other players will kind of embrace this and adopt this style. And they already kind of have a little bit, but nobody's really bought in 100% as Bryson. And Bryson's even trying to go longer, Mike. He even talked about afterwards looking for a longer driver, and he kind of models himself after the long drive guys. You've seen those guys, right, that are just jacked and just swing as hard as they can. That's kind of how he models himself.
Grip it and rip it.
Right. And he's even considering going to a longer driver to try to get more length. So we'll see. I mean, I want to see how he holds up, how he physically holds up through all this, because it's got to take a toll, even if he's doing things to release some of the tension and stress on his back and knees. But it's got to catch up to him at some point. Not that I don't want it to. I'm not saying that. I just think that physically it's got to, right? I mean, it doesn't make sense if it doesn't, and I think that's going to hurt some other players too. So we'll see. I mean, I don't know, Mike. And it's one reason why this is, and we'll wrap it up on this note because I don't want to get too deep into this, but it's one reason why the U.S. has struggled so much in the Ryder Cup when they play Europe, because Europe is more about ball striking, accuracy, and they set up their courses a lot of times to penalize a lot of the American players that hit it longer, while they're just plotting it down the fairway, and they've had a lot of success that way. So we've seen when those two styles of play go head to head a lot of times in the Ryder Cup, you've seen the results go against those long hitters. So I don't know. Well, we talk golf, and I appreciate you entertaining me on that, Mike.
No problem at all. Hey, I learned a lot. As a sports fan, sometimes you're in a situation where you need to take a step back and learn from others. And I definitely learned a lot from you here today. That point you just brought up about the Ryder Cup courses, maybe we'll revisit that down the line when there is a Ryder Cup.
Yeah. We have to wait another year, unfortunately, but we'll get there at some point. All right, we'll close it out on that note. Thanks for joining us for this mini-sode. We want to give our thoughts on the U.S. Open and kind of what it means for the future of golf and how it compares to some things that have happened before. So thanks for listening. We will wrap it on by that note. Check us out, DistantReplayPodcast.com on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube.